Okay, people. All right, so this, I believe, is where we stopped looking at our Neolithic river valleys. Please make sure again that you've got that assignment from yesterday turned in. And make sure again that you wrote the paragraph, because I think I have that assignment worth 40 points, and 10 points is if for the graph, because all you're doing is moving information over. So if you did not write the paragraph, that's minus 30 points. So please make sure that you, or the two paragraphs, because that obviously is the point, the part of the assignment that I feel is the most important. So if you will close up your laptops and get ready, we are going to move to our last part of this chapter, and what we'll be dealing with for the next couple of days is the end of the Neolithic and the beginning of looking at our civilizations, all right? So our end of the Neolithic age begins when people learn to use metal. So at this point, we've been making tools out of stuff that we find. Flints, rocks, clamshells, sticks, but eventually we learn how to use metals. And when we learn how to use metal, we move into a different time period. We start with copper, but copper is really flimsy. It's easily to bend. We'll then mix it with tin, and then we get bronze, which is a hard substance. Not as hard as iron, which we'll get to eventually. But then again, with this widespread use, we're going to move into the Bronze Age. So for our test, you need to know the 4 time periods that we have studied up to this point in order: Paleolithic, Ice Age, Neolithic, Bronze. And it is specifically bronze, not metal, because I'll put in there Metal Age. It's not the Metal Age. It's a Bronze Age. And I don't remember how I have it on the test, but you should be able to do it either way. If I say Old Stone Age, Ice Age, New Stone Age, Bronze Age. I don't think I have that one, because that one's fairly simple. Okay, so make sure that you know those in order. It's still a multiple choice question, but making sure that you know all that, the stuff in order. So now we have ended, and it doesn't mean that obviously we stopped growing agriculture. At this point, what it means is we've built on the agriculture, and hopefully you understand with agriculture, if we build better tools and use metal, our ability to farm will get better as well. So don't always think of, when we talk about metals, instantly your brain going to like weapons and things, which that of course will be a large part of it, but it also helps us to build better tools that can help better with the spread of agriculture. And so our last topic that's really, really important, and we will be looking at these features as we move into chapter 2. In chapter 2, we'll actually start looking at real civilizations at that point. The Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Hittites, the Mesopotamians. We'll look at all these different groups. And when we look at these groups, we're going to particularly pay attention to these 8 features of a civilization. These are the things that you're going to have to list on the test. And as many gazillion years as I have been teaching this, I have yet to come up with anything, a sentence, an acronym that helps you remember these. I wish I could, because I think I could make a lot of money on Teachers Pay Teachers if I could, but I can't. I've tried a gazillion different ways of trying to help you remember these 8 characteristics. I will tell you the 2 that get left off the most, if that helps you to know, is cities. Everyone always forgets that. You actually have to have a city first for it to be a civilization. You have to have a gathering of people. Government, religion, social structure gets missed a lot, because you guys think of social like I have lots of friends, but that's not what that means. A social structure means what I had been talking about this whole time, about people have certain jobs, and those jobs make them a better step higher than everyone else. That's a social structure. In our high school, we have a social structure, right? Freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. That's a social structure. You can't move out of that barrier until you move to the next. And we treat those groups of people differently. Probably not this year, but for instance, seniors after the first 9 weeks, and we have a grading period. If they have a C or better in all their classes, they have no tardies. They get to go out for lunch on Fridays. I don't know that we'll be doing that due to the pandemic, but that's something that's only offered to seniors. So that's that social structure. Writing is obviously very important. Art, we spent a lot of time talking about art. Job specialization, and public works is the other one that gets left out a lot. Public works are things that people build for the public, like roads, bridges, irrigation ditches, walls. That's public works. And so in order to have a civilization, a classified civilization, you have to have all 8 of those things. And those 8 things, again, will be developed through time. All of our civilizations we're going to study in our second chapter did not start instantaneously with all these different steps. They come through eventually, and usually the last one will be art. That will be the last one that will allow people to create things that we can't eat, that we can't defend ourselves with, that we can't trade. That's a sign of a higher upper level civilization, that we allow people to create art. Basically, something that's not worth anything except to intrinsically make us feel good, either looking at it, listening to it, reading. And that's a high level feature as we move through. So any questions about those? And making sure that you understand that this is a list on the test. It's not a matching or a fill in the blank. You're going to have to write each of these out. Spelling does not count. Those of you that are horrible spellers, half the time on the key to the test, I spell them wrong, which might make you get it wrong, which will freak you out, but I'll go back and fix it. I'm the world's worst speller. Horrible. So spelling doesn't count as long as I can figure out what you're trying to spell. So we're going to look at these individually. Obviously, this one, I think, is why so many people miss this one on the test, because it seems so fairly obvious. Well, of course you have to have a city to have a civilization, but we do need a group or a gathering of people. And those first cities are going to grow up around river valleys. And all of these civilizations that we're going to study in chapter 2 are all formed in desert areas. And the geographic definition of a desert is less than 10 inches of rain. So any place where there's less than 10 inches of rain, it's a desert. As a result of that, you can understand they need a lot of water, because they're not going to get it from rainwater. And in our first civilization in Mesopotamia, they're going to get runoff water from mountains that will come down. And so they will dig these very crude irrigation ditches from the Tigris and the Euphrates to start irrigating those crops in order to create large-scale farming, so that we can have large populations. Okay, that one's fairly straightforward. Government, and again, on that Paleolithic, Neolithic chart, most of the time when people think government, they think of this highly organized elections and presidents. A government is really just simply a group of people to organize and regulate activities. They don't have to be elected, they don't have to have names, but a government runs a city smoothly so that we have good interaction between groups and individuals. We'll make different kinds of rules or laws. We'll organize armies for protection. We'll keep civil disobedience at rest. For instance, most of what government in this early time will really be about what we call civil law, like someone's building fell on another building, or we're going to build dams to try to kind of hold some of that water in and the dam breaks and floods out something? Who's responsible? Who must pay for that? And that's what governments will do as we move forward. So again, it doesn't have to be something organized like we think, like a mayor has to be elected or any of those. It's the beginning. It's very a small group of people making sure that everyone follows all the rules at the same time. And then, of course, organizing these armies. All right? Anybody have that one? Questions about that? All right, our next one's going to be religion. And again, it is not anything even remotely what we would classify as religion today. Religion develops very, very simply, and again, this is a test question. I would put a box around that first bullet point. Why do we develop religion? To explain things that we don't understand and to explain how we got here. Every single religion, regardless of what that religion is, has a creation story. It all fairly much is the same. My favorite is the creation story for Native Americans. And for Native Americans, the creation God scooped out the earth, made man, stuck them in a kiln to fire them, and in that act, overbaked some people and underbaked some people. So some people have really dark skin, some people are underbaked. I love that story because that means we're all the same, made out of the same earth, stuck in the same kiln, but some of us just got to stay in there a little bit longer than other. Every religion has a destruction story, that somehow the earth was destroyed and remade. Christianity, obviously Judaism, it's the same story. Hindus have the same, Muslims have the same. They all, Native American religion has the same, of this destruction of the earth and this rebuilding of the earth. And again, in essence, it's this idea of trying to explain things we don't understand and reducing that, I think, to something that maybe we can put in our own world. Is when you're little and you perhaps were afraid of thunder or lightning, and your parents gave you an explanation like it's the angels bowling or something of that nature, trying to explain. If you can imagine living in a world where none of that is explained to you. Weather is a phenomenon that you don't get. The rivers are going to flood and you have no idea why. That gives us rise to, there's gods and goddesses that control those things. So we will have a god or goddess of the sun that makes the sun come up. So we got to make sure that we are reverent and give sacrifices to the sun god, so the sun continues to come up. There's a moon god, there's a river god, there's a rain god. So in order for those things to function properly, we must, as a civilization, do all things to honor those gods. And what happens if that particular thing we flood? Obviously, we didn't do something right. That's the way that's looked upon. The third part of this is the priest. And there will be priestesses. For a really long time, both men and women have access to the ideas of these gods and goddesses. And it's really important to understand religion in the sense of power and how much power I have and I can control if I'm the priest of our village. I'm the only one that knows how to honor the sacred sun god correctly so that the sun smiles down on us. So I can tell you whatever I want. In order for the sun to come up tomorrow, you all must give me 100 opals or 100 rubies, or you all must make sure that you clean my house by sunup tomorrow. As the priestess that holds that knowledge, I have a significant amount of power over you. I can use that power for good. I can also use that power for personal gain. But these people become very powerful. And for a long time, females are part of this as well, priests and priestesses. And that ability to hold and control the religion of a tribe is very powerful. It's not anything even remotely connected to what we think of as religion today. These people aren't faithful, but they just know they have to do certain things for their village to be smiled upon. Okay, social structure again is one of the ones that, again, I think is most often misunderstood and forgotten often on our list, mostly because it's two words. Try to think of those groups that have two words: social structure, public works, job specialization, and make sure you remember that you've got three that are two words. This is based on your economic status, and we're going to develop these things on economic status, and then it will be power driven. So our top economic social structure class will be the rulers, priests, and warriors, and hopefully you can understand why they are our top of our social structure. The rulers, obviously, because they're going to rule. Priests, as for what I just said, that they control how we protect ourselves from bad gods and how we ingratiate ourselves to good gods. And then warriors. And for most of the time that we're studying, the rulers will be warriors, because we don't have any kind of hereditary rule yet. I just don't get to be king because my dad was king. I'm going to run the tribe because I'm the most powerful warrior. And then in the middle, we've got free people, farmers, and artisans. Those are that upper class. And then at the bottom will be slaves. So here's an opportunity to take a moment to make sure that we understand what this word enslaved people means. At the time period of which we're speaking, it's anybody that we capture. It has nothing to do with the continent that you're from or the color of your face. We need people to do these things and build these things and take care of all the things that we need. So as warrior tribes, as we conquer people, we enslave them. And those people become slaves until either two things happen. Their tribe comes and takes them back, or our tribe is enslaved by another tribe, or I guess the third thing, or would be until they somehow either earn their freedom or they die. So again, we'll talk about slaves a lot in this beginning of civilizations, because that's how work was done, that we would capture people for the intent of enslaving them and making them do work for us. So make sure you kind of put a star by this one or something, because seriously, everybody forgets this one, or they want to describe it as something else. Next one is very simple. It's called writing. We have to write things. And when we start writing things down, that moves us into that idea of a civilization. The first, do I have anybody in here whose families are accountants or tax people or record bookkeepers? Anybody? That is the second job of the whole wide world. First one are farmers. Second ones are accountants, because we have to keep accurate records of transactions. We don't have money yet. We don't have any system of coinage or paper money. So our trading system is based on a barter system. And if I'm a farmer and I need something now, I have to trade in advance. I need a goat, but my wheat's not in, I haven't harvested my wheat yet. So I would go to this accountant and they would write it on a clay tablet, and they would record our transaction. And then once that transaction would be followed through with, they would, if you've ever heard this, they would wipe the slate clean or wash my debts away. All of these recordings are done on clay tablets. So they're pushed in, recorded on clay, and then my debts are washed away when I fulfill that debt. Secondarily, we get to that form of creative expression, and that's kind of tied in with art. So the first reason that writing is developed at all is not to record, not to write down our history, but to keep accurate records. And most of those records, again, are economic records, making sure that we keep our debts paid. All right. Art is next. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about art. Remember, again, art can be just about anything that is pleasing to the eye, ear. Buildings, paintings, sculpture was used to portray the natural forces or gods. And this, again, is a sign that your civilization is flourishing. This is one of the last things to develop. This is a sign of a higher level civilization, that you value and allow people to create art. And I'm pretty sure that's a test question as well. How do you know that your civilization is flourishing? You allow people to produce art, and that becomes, again, an essential and important part of a civilization. And then our last two double letter specialization. Cities need things such as builders, makers of tools, makers of weapons. And again, we allow people to specialize in those jobs because one person can't do everything. People begin to specialize in certain jobs. And again, that is an essential, important part of our role as a civilization. And it creates this interdependence on each other, that we all depend on each other to do our jobs, because without this interconnection, we either don't eat, or we don't have weapons, or we don't have tools, or we don't have buildings. And all these people work together in this way to create this civilization that cares and takes care of all of our needs. And again, an essential part, and this is really one of the last, again, things that develops as we build our civilization, that we have fewer and fewer people that need to farm, and because those fewer and fewer people need to farm, they can pick other things that they like or other things that they're good at to help our civilization prosper. Okay, and if you're not done with this one, I can come back. And our very last one are public works. Public works are signs of strong rulers, because public works mean that it was paid for at this time out of the funds that the ruler has, that I'm going to pay for things that benefit everyone and not just me. So if I'm the ruler of our tribe, a good ruler takes care of everyone. A bad ruler takes care of themselves. I ride around in a big, nice car, and I have all the trappings of luxuries while you work to supply that. And that usually tends to be a civilization that will not prosper very well. So public works are a sign of strong rulers. Public works benefit everyone. They are very, very costly in two ways. One, they actually require funds, but they also require a lot of human labor. And you really get that last, because we have to think about, especially when we get to Egypt and we're building all those gigantic pyramids that take 40 years to build. When we have people building things like that, they aren't farming. And when you don't have a good ratio between people that are building things and people that are farming, you're going to have difficulty. And that's what's going to happen with our old kingdom in Egypt. They're going to start building all these awesome pyramids, but not have enough people farm. And so because they don't have enough people farm, then we have the destruction and the end of the civilization in Egypt. And examples of that are irrigation systems. And irrigation systems are not even remotely what we would see in and around our Sullivan County. It would just be really just ditches. Roads, bridges, and defensive walls that we're going to build around ourselves to protect ourselves and to keep mostly our food. What are we protecting? Really, besides our lives, is food. That's the big thing that we're protecting. So, anybody have questions about that? All right. So our assignment today is one of our first assignments on paper, and one of those reasons. Yes, Drew. I need to go back. Which one? Job specialization. Is this the one? Art. There we go. So this will be one of the first assignments that we're going to do on paper, which I hope, if you don't, you can bring them tomorrow. You can just get started. You have brought your color pencils or some kind of thing that you can do art with. If you haven't, make sure you have them tomorrow, or let me know that you don't have any and I can pick some up from the office, okay? So what we're working on is our features of a civilization. These things, again, are really important. Finish. You can just turn it in, Maggie. When we finish a chapter, until, except for those of you that have to take the midterm, and remember, freshmen, your ACT teacher should have been telling you that this year, the only way that you have to take a final is if you have more than 5 tardies. technically or typically you have, just take that with you. Typically, it also has to do with the absences, but due to our current health system, we are not holding anybody to absences. So if you're tardy more than 5 times, you have to take a final. And on that, you have to remember everything that we've learned this whole semester. So note to self, do not be tardy. It is not fun to take finals. It's 2 hours. You're in here with me for 2 hours. Nobody else is here. So try your hardest not to be tardy. Typically, I tell you, other than if you have to take final, when we finish with a chapter, we're done. We don't really need anything to move on. This time we need to keep those 8 features of a civilization for at least our first 4 chapters, which is why I make you write them down on the test and not use it as just like a matching, like my other vocab, because these are words that we will need, that 8 features of a civilization, throughout our whole rest of our chapter. So our assignment is, hey, Alex. Thanks for coming back and remembering. And just pop next door, okay?
Right.
We eat sea lunch, so if you're not finished before sea lunch, just leave your test there and shut the door, okay? All right, thank you. All right, so this is our 8 features of a civilization. On each slice of this pizza, which you can see the pizza over there, label one of the features of a civilization. You should include on each slice one feature of a civilization, the definition, and an image you create on each slice. Any image that you like. First and foremost, this is not an art project. I can't draw. I will be impressed with whatever you do because I cannot draw. But as we look through again this chapter, we've done a lot of writing, we've done a lot of stuff here. I need for my people that learn by putting their hands on stuff and seeing things laid out, you need this opportunity to do these kind of assignments. So I do require you to do your best in drawing a picture. The picture must make sense. I don't, again, count as an art project. I will be impressed with whatever you do. And then it must need color. And I would highly encourage you to color each one of these 8 things something different. For those of you that have visual memories, that you see things, and those would be the people that when you're asked to recall something, so let's say that you read a textbook and you've had a test question and you can kind of remember in the textbook where you saw that, you have a visual memory. You need to see things laid out. Again, color for me is always something that helps me remember things. I think I might have told you maybe. When my dad was stationed in West Germany, I obviously took German for the 3 years that we lived there. And the German language has 3 pronouns, der, die, and das, masculine, feminine, and neuter. And none of it makes sense. A window is neuter, a desk is masculine. Makes no sense. To Germans, I'm sure it does, but to us, it makes no sense. So when I had to take vocab or study my vocab, there was no way for me to do that. So I did with color. I had blue index cards, pink index cards, and green index cards. And I would just write the vocab word on there, just so that my mind would see that one I wrote on green. So it's neuter. That one I wrote on pink, so it's feminine. If any of what I'm saying makes sense to you, that color makes sense, you really need to pay attention to this assignment to let you say, what did I write? I wrote that one in red. What was that one that I drew the picture for? Oh, it was cities. So again, this assignment helps my visual learners. The rest of you, we get off the laptop and we get to write and color, which is always fun, and get to think a little bit differently about these features of a civilization, okay? Any questions about this? You have the rest of this class period to work on it and the entire class period tomorrow, and it's due at the end of the class period tomorrow, okay? Yes, sir.
What time is sea lunch?
Do what, honey?
What time is sea lunch again?
I still can't hear, I'm sorry.
What time is sea lunch again?
We get out of here at 11:50. 11:50. we have a little bit longer in this class just because we've got to give everybody extra time to get out of the cafeteria. We used to had a crossover. All right, so your pizza's on the back. And you can use whatever. I'm not grading the front, so those of you that are using markers, go right ahead and use markers. If I'm not looking at the. Yes, I have to press that. And usually I don't ask for school supplies because I have a big box, but because we can't share, that's just, I think I ask for color pencils, highlighters, and paper, and that's about it. No. I'm not believing this. Rocco just said it. Did you hear Rocco when he came in? Rocco was just telling me that as well. I tend to, do what? I know. Rocco always is slightly always on time. Okay. Let me get this for you. And then where do you go? Do you know where you're going after sea lunch? You're going to Coach Moore, so that's downstairs. That's downstairs in that back hallway. Do you remember where she walked you around, where Miss Couch, because she took you all over our insurance? But just know that if you have any of these room numbers, that are one, that's downstairs, two are upstairs, and then the gym. And then, did you find your back down there? All right. All right, questions, anyone? I'm gonna stop the recording. If it hasn't stopped already.